The first thing that disappears in collapse isn't electricity or order, it's background noise. The hum that once wrapped the world goes silent, and in that silence, everything changes. What used to blend in suddenly stands out. Your breath, your footsteps, the click of a latch. The smallest sound becomes a signal, and every signal becomes information. This is the moment most people don't recognize until it's already too late. In normal life, sound is comfort. It's proof that things are working. Engines, voices, music, machinery, all of it reassures you that the system is alive. But when the system fails, that same soundscape inverts. Silence becomes the new baseline. Anything that breaks it becomes a flare, whether you meant it to or not. People imagine danger arriving loudly. Chaos, shouting, violence. In reality, danger arrives quietly, listening. In a silent environment, sound travels farther and sharper. It bends around corners. It carries through empty buildings. It lingers longer in the air. What once faded into background noise now paints a precise map of your presence. The mistake people make is assuming danger comes from action. They don't realize it often comes from routine. The sound of a door closing at the same hour every night. The metallic clink of cookware. A cough that repeats too often. These are patterns, and patterns get noticed, not by monsters or villains, by other people trying to survive. Sound also reveals condition. A steady step sounds confident. A dragged foot sounds tired. A rattling bag suggests supplies. A generator's rhythm announces abundance. None of this requires malice to attract attention. It simply invites curiosity, and curiosity is enough to pull people towards you. What makes this dangerous is how quickly sound trains behavior. Once someone hears you, they start listening for you. Once they recognize a rhythm, they anticipate it. And anticipation turns presence into predictability. You don't have to be loud to be located. You just have to be consistent. Those who last learn that silence isn't about hiding. It's about discipline. They move slower, not because they're afraid, but because they're intentional. They cushion contact points. They choose timing over speed. They understand that every unnecessary sound is a message sent without knowing who will receive it. This isn't paranoia, it's awareness. In a world stripped of noise, sound becomes currency. You spend it whether you mean to or not. The wise spend it sparingly. They let the environment speak first. They move when cover exists. They pause when the world listens. Collapse doesn't announce itself with explosions. It announces itself with absence, and then waits to see who fills the silence. The people who survive are the ones who understand that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is make yourself heard. Drop your city in the comments. I want to see where the survivors are watching from. And hit subscribe while you're here. Once silence becomes the baseline, sound stops being background and starts becoming information. Every noise you make carries intent, whether you mean it to or not. In a quiet world, sound is no longer passive, it's communicative. It announces presence, movement, condition, and sometimes even intent. You don't have to speak to be heard. Existing is enough. In stable times, noise dissolves into other noise. Engines cover footsteps. Music masks voices. Machines drown out mistakes. But when those layers vanish, sound sharpens. It travels farther. It lingers longer. It carries shape. A single noise can outline a person's routine with surprising accuracy. It doesn't take surveillance, only attention. What most people miss is how descriptive sound becomes. The rhythm of movement reveals confidence or fatigue. The pace of breathing reveals stress. The way something is set down, careful or careless, reveals mental state. Even silence itself communicates. A sudden absence of sound can draw more attention than noise ever could. People often think silence means don't talk. That's only the beginning. Silence is about timing, restraint, and intention. It's about understanding that every action has an acoustic footprint. Even soft actions echo in a quiet world. Even careful movements have signatures. The danger isn't that others are listening maliciously. It's that listening becomes instinctive when the environment changes. Humans evolved to read sound as survival data. In collapse, that instinct reactivates. People unconsciously track what they hear, building mental maps of activity around them. Those maps influence decisions, where to go, who to avoid, what to approach. This is why repetitive sound is especially dangerous. Patterns invite interpretation. A repeated noise suggests routine, and routine implies predictability. Predictability suggests opportunity. It doesn't matter whether that opportunity is benign or harmful. Once you're predictable, you're part of someone else's calculations. Many try to solve this by masking sound instead of managing it. They add noise to cover noise. But added sound only expands your footprint. It's like lighting a candle in the dark and hoping no one sees it because it's not very bright. Silence isn't about hiding, it's about blending. It's about letting the environment speak louder than you do. Those who adapt begin to move in rhythm with their surroundings. They pause when wind moves. They act during rain. They let environmental noise carry their actions. They don't rush to fill quiet moments. They wait for them to pass naturally. This isn't fear, it's fluency. The same way you learn not to shout in a library, you learn not to announce yourself in a silent world. You don't become invisible, you become unremarkable. And unremarkable is safety. Sound in collapse is no longer neutral. It's a language. And once you understand it, you stop speaking unnecessarily. You let the world talk first. And you answer only when it's wise. Those who survive aren't the quietest people. They're the ones who understand when sound matters and when it doesn't. The most dangerous sounds are the ones that feel normal. They blend into your habits so completely that you stop registering them as sound at all. Breathing, shifting weight, brushing fabric, setting something down. These are movements you've repeated your entire life. They feel harmless because they've always been harmless. But in a quieter world, familiarity becomes exposure. What makes sound dangerous isn't volume, but contrast. When the environment is still, even small disturbances stand out. A subtle noise doesn't disappear. It travels. It reflects. It lingers. And unlike sight, sound doesn't require line of sight to reveal you. It curves, bounces, and carries intention farther than you expect. This is why people misjudge risk. They think in terms of visibility, shadows, cover, darkness, but overlook the fact that sound ignores those boundaries. A closed door doesn't stop it. A wall only reshapes it. Silence becomes the canvas on which every movement is painted. The problem deepens because the brain filters out repetition. What you hear constantly fades from awareness. The soft scrape of a shoe. The familiar creak of a floorboard. The way your breathing changes when you focus. You stop noticing these sounds, but others don't. To them, those cues arrive fresh, unfiltered, and full of information. Sound carries emotion whether you want it to or not. Calm has a rhythm. Anxiety has a pace. Exhaustion has a drag. Confidence has a tempo. Even when no words are spoken, the body broadcasts state of mind through sound. That information shapes how others interpret risk, opportunity, and intent. This is where the danger truly lies. Not in noise itself, but in predictability. Repetition teaches patterns. Patterns allow anticipation. Anticipation removes uncertainty. And when uncertainty disappears, the balance of power shifts. You are no longer unknown. You are mapped. People often think concealment means hiding from sight. In reality, sound is the primary way environments communicate presence. Darkness doesn't protect you if your movement tells a story. Stillness doesn't help if your rhythm gives you away. Silence isn't emptiness. It's context. Those who adapt don't try to eliminate sound entirely. That's impossible. Instead, they become aware of it. They learn how environments respond. They recognize when sound is absorbed, when it carries, when it betrays. They stop fighting silence and begin to move within it. This awareness changes behavior naturally. Movements become intentional rather than automatic. Pauses replace haste. Actions happen with awareness of their acoustic weight, not fear of it. The goal isn't invisibility, it's irrelevance. To exist without announcing. The moment you realize how much of yourself you broadcast without knowing, something shifts. You stop assuming privacy. You stop assuming anonymity. And you start understanding that sound is a language spoken long before words. Those who survive don't mute themselves completely. They learn when to speak, when to move, and when to let the world stay quiet around them. Sound doesn't simply travel through space, it carries meaning. In moments of instability, every noise becomes a message, even when no message was intended. The human brain is wired to interpret sound as signal first and context second. Long before logic engages, the nervous system decides whether a noise matters. That instinct never turns off, and during collapse, it becomes hyperactive. What makes sound dangerous isn't its volume, but its implication. A sound implies presence. Presence implies resources. Resources imply possibility. In uncertain environments, possibility is magnetic. People are drawn to it, not out of malice, but out of need. A noise suggests that someone is coping, surviving, or functioning, and that idea alone can pull attention like gravity. This is how sound quietly reshapes social behavior. It stops being background and becomes data. People begin mapping their surroundings based on auditory clues, even unconsciously. A repeated noise becomes a reference point. A familiar rhythm becomes a pattern. And patterns invite interpretation. Once interpretation begins, curiosity follows. Curiosity doesn't require bad intent. It only requires uncertainty. When people are unsure of their future, they look outward for cues. A sound becomes a question. Who is there? What do they have? How are they managing? Those questions are rarely malicious, but they don't remain neutral for long. Curiosity evolves into comparison. Comparison into desire. Desire into motion. What makes this especially dangerous is that sound communicates consistency. A one-time noise fades into the background. Repetition creates narrative. The human mind is built to extract meaning from repetition, even when none was intended. That's how habits become visible, and visibility becomes vulnerability. Silence, in contrast, is ambiguous. It offers nothing to analyze. It provides no pattern to follow. In uncertain environments, ambiguity is protection, not because it hides action, but because it denies interpretation. When there's nothing to read, there's nothing to plan around. The mistake many people make is believing that attention only comes from obvious signals. In reality, attention grows from predictability. Predictable behavior allows others to build expectations. Expectations reduce uncertainty, and reducing uncertainty invites movement toward you, not necessarily with harm, but with interest that can quickly become pressure. This is where sound stops being a sensory experience and becomes a social one. It shapes how others model your existence. It tells them when you're active, when you rest, when you're likely vulnerable. It sketches your rhythm in a world that is desperately trying to find rhythm again. Those who understand this don't aim for total silence. That's unrealistic and unsustainable. Instead, they understand the value of irregularity, not chaos, unpredictability. They avoid establishing patterns that others can learn. They resist becoming a stable reference point in an unstable environment. This awareness isn't paranoia, it's literacy. It's understanding how attention flows when systems collapse and people revert to instinct. Sound becomes language. And like any language, it can reveal more than intended. The danger isn't being heard, it's being understood. And once you're understood, you stop being invisible. And invisibility is often the last real protection left. Silence is often misunderstood as emptiness, but in collapse, it becomes a signal with structure. When noise disappears, what remains is not nothing, it's awareness. Silence creates a space where meaning forms. It sharpens perception, stretches attention, and forces interpretation. In unstable environments, silence stops being passive and starts acting like a message in itself. When people expect sound and receive none, their minds begin to fill the gap. Silence suggests intention. It implies caution, presence, or absence, all of which provoke curiosity. A quiet space invites questions. Who is there? Why are they quiet? What are they waiting for? In this way, silence becomes active without making a sound. Those who survive learn that silence unsettles others because it denies feedback. Noise reassures. Silence unsettles. When someone hears nothing, they cannot gauge mood, numbers, or intent. That uncertainty forces hesitation, and hesitation buys time. In unstable environments, time is leverage. Most people instinctively break silence to soothe themselves. They hum, talk, shuffle, or create noise to fill the void. These behaviors feel comforting, but they leak information. Sound confirms presence. It defines location. It establishes rhythm. Once rhythm exists, it can be anticipated. Anticipation turns into predictability, and predictability invites risk. Silence, by contrast, resists interpretation. It allows you to exist without being defined. It interrupts the mental maps others try to build around you. In silence, you become an unknown variable rather than a known quantity. In unknowns, slow decisions. Silence also changes how you perceive the world. Without constant auditory input, subtle shifts become noticeable. Air movement, distant vibration. The difference between mechanical noise and organic sound. Your awareness stretches outward instead of inward. This expanded perception isn't mystical, it's neurological. The brain reallocates attention when stimuli decrease. Over time, people who embrace silence move differently. Their actions become deliberate. They stop filling gaps with noise. They pause before acting. This doesn't make them cautious, it makes them intentional. They act when the environment supports action, not when impatience demands it. There's also an emotional shift. Silence reduces performative behavior. Without an audience, even an imagined one, actions become practical rather than expressive. You stop signaling your state to others. You stop narrating your experience. This quiet detachment preserves energy and clarity. Silence in this sense becomes a language of restraint. It communicates nothing outward while conveying everything inward. It allows observation without commitment and movement without announcement. It gives you the ability to choose when to be seen and when to remain undefined. In environments shaped by uncertainty, the loudest people often lose control first. The quiet ones endure, not because they hide, but because they understand that silence is not emptiness, it's a strategic absence. And in collapse, absence can be the safest form of presence. The most dangerous sound is the one you stop yourself from making at the last moment. It's the breath you don't release, the step you hold back, the question you swallow. That absence carries more weight than any noise you could produce because it represents awareness. The moment instinct overrides impulse. Survival often begins not with action, but with restraint. In collapse, restraint becomes a form of intelligence. People imagine survival as movement and reaction, but it's often defined by hesitation, not the kind born of fear, but the kind born of assessment. The decision to pause instead of proceed. To wait instead of announce, to observe instead of react. That pause is where outcomes shift. Most people are conditioned to fill silence. Silence feels wrong, unfinished. It demands resolution. So they speak, move, explain. They make themselves known. But in unstable environments, every action echoes beyond its intention. Every choice leaves a trace. The people who last are the ones who understand that not every moment requires participation. Silence isn't passivity, it's filtration. It strips decisions down to their consequences. When you don't speak, you listen. When you don't move, you see. When you don't act, you notice patterns forming without your interference. Silence lets the environment reveal itself instead of forcing you to impose meaning on it. The danger of sound isn't volume, it's commitment. A sound says, I'm here. It narrows possibilities. It invites response. Even a small action can trigger reactions you can't predict or control. Silence keeps possibilities open. It keeps options alive. Those who survive longest learn to subtract before they add. They remove unnecessary gestures. They reduce exposure. They allow situations to resolve themselves before stepping in. This restraint often looks like hesitation to others, but it's actually precision. It's knowing when not to reveal yourself. There's also a psychological shift that comes with mastering silence. You stop needing validation. You stop announcing your presence to feel real. You become comfortable being unseen. That comfort changes how you move through the world. You stop broadcasting intent and start observing consequence. This doesn't mean fear governs every choice. It means intention does. Silence becomes a tool, not a hiding place. It's used deliberately, not reflexively. And once you understand that, you begin to notice how much noise others make and how often it costs them. The people who endure are rarely the loudest or the most decisive. They're the ones who know when not to act. They let others reveal themselves first. They let situations mature before committing. They understand that the absence of sound can be a shield as powerful as any barrier. In collapse, survival isn't about making yourself heard. It's about knowing when to disappear from the conversation entirely. The sound that gets you found is rarely the one you make on purpose. It's the one you didn't realize you were making at all.